The phone buzzed on the kitchen counter long after midnight. A thin insect sound in a silent adobe house. Victor Langford stared at the glowing screen as if it were a coal he didn't dare touch. A preview banner slid across the lock screen. Cole M. You still taste like last time. The words hit like sudden altitude, the room thinning around him. He didn't move for a full breath, then another. Outside, the winter wind combed the cottonwoods along the arroyo and sent a dry rattle through the leaves piled against the wall. He told himself not to look. He told himself to put the phone back where Elise had left it, face down beside the ceramic bowl of roasted chilies she promised to peel in the morning. But the banner pulsed again. Another message, then a third. And in the soft blue light, her passcode rose out of his memory as if his thumbs had known it all along. Keep watching. It only gets deeper. The messages were not a misunderstanding. They weren't late-night jokes or careless office banter. They were hands and mouths and days counted until the next hotel room off Cerrillos Road. Photos bloomed up at him. The edge of a shoulder he knew, the hollow at the base of her throat, the unmistakable mirror of a downtown suite. He scrolled until his thumb went numb, then scrolled more. The way a man pokes a tooth he knows is cracked just to prove the pain is still there. He lowered the phone to the counter and stood very still. The refrigerator clicked. The house creaked in the slow temperature drop that always follows desert dusk. Across the hallway, Elise slept on her side with the covers pulled high, a soft shape he had once thought could never hold harm. Victor watched her breathe and noticed, with awful clarity, that he did not know this person at all. On the screen, Cole Mathers had a square jaw and light-colored eyes in the company directory. Regional director. New to the Santa Fe office. He wore that easy smile men in leadership trainings are taught to call approachable. Victor had shaken his hand at a holiday mixer 2 months earlier. The two of them balancing small plates of tamales while Elise made the introductions. Cole, this is my husband, Victor. Cole's palm had been dry and warm. Victor remembered the precise pressure of it now with a nauseating intimacy. He picked up the phone again, not to rage, but to record. He opened the thread, screenshotted quietly, page after page, saving each image to a hidden album. When the app warned him about iCloud storage, he laughed out loud, a small, strangled sound. Then airdropped the files to his laptop and a thumb drive he kept in the junk drawer with rubber bands and old batteries. He set both drives beside the toaster like talismans. There was a time not long ago when he would have walked into the bedroom and detonated everything. A younger Victor would have turned on the lamp, held the phone out like evidence in a courtroom, and demanded answers she would not give. But 52 was not 27. Years in the field had taught him that the loudest man on a job site is rarely the most dangerous. Quiet men take measurements. Quiet men draw up plans. He poured water from the clay pitcher and drank, the rim cool against his lip. He thought of their son's photographs on the fridge, the ones from Taos Ski Valley last winter, cheeks red and eyes bright. He thought of their mortgage, of the ceramic studio Elise had dreamed up for the garage and half built before work, got crazy, of the way Santa Fe light could turn cruel in late afternoon. He thought of the word Cole next to you still taste like last time, and felt something in his chest harden into a tool he recognized. The kitchen clock slid toward 1. He moved through the house, a careful inventory. His passport, the safe key, the file of tax returns, the closing documents on the house. In the office, he booted his laptop and created a folder with a name so dull it would never be opened by accident. Appliance Receipts 2019-2024. Inside, he dropped the screenshots, the photos, the small videos Elise had sent with quick laughing captions. He printed a few and slipped them into a manila envelope. He labeled it, because he was still that kind of man, with a single neat word: documentation. Back in the bedroom, Elise shifted. "Vic," she murmured, not quite waking. He watched her face arrange itself into the lines he knew. Worry smoothed, mouth soft, hair a dark spill on the pillow. His body remembered their gentleness with a terrible fidelity. He stood in the doorway and felt both love and its ghost. He took a blanket from the chair and lay on the couch. The stucco ceiling above him glowed dimly from the streetlight that slipped past the vigas. Somewhere a dog barked twice and went quiet. He did not cry. He thought about the morning instead, about a call to a lawyer whose number his neighbor Nolan had pressed into his hand years ago, just to have, about a cup of coffee at the diner on Agua Fria, where Nolan still liked to sit by the window and tell stories about the days he wore a badge in Española, about the HR page on Elise's company website with its tidy language and zero-tolerance policy for supervisor-subordinate relationships. When fatigue finally took him, it wasn't sleep so much as a measured blackout, his body doing what it must. He dreamed of desert roads the color of old pennies and of a stop sign he could not reach. At dawn, he woke to the smell of coffee and chiles warming in a pan. Elise stood at the stove in one of his t-shirts, humming under her breath. She looked over her shoulder and smiled, easy as any morning. "Breakfast burritos before you head out?" she asked. "I've got an early call, but we have time." Victor returned the smile with the only thing he trusted: silence. He sat at the table, opened his notebook, and wrote down 3 lines in neat block letters. First attorney. 2nd evidence secured. 3. Timing. He underlined the last word and folded the page. Then he took a bite of eggs he could not taste and said, as kindly as a man might say to a stranger, "You'll be late if you don't leave in 10. The following days felt like walking through a minefield. Every interaction with Lauren carried a strange weight, as if I could hear the ticking of some hidden device beneath the surface. I played my part, calm, polite, even warm at times. But behind my eyes, I was gathering every piece of the puzzle. At work, the tension was even more palpable. Daniel, her so-called colleague, barely made eye contact with me anymore. When he did, there was this awkward flicker of guilt, or maybe it was fear, that darted across his face before he'd quickly look away. I kept my conversations with him short and professional, careful not to let my anger slip into my tone. The last thing I wanted was to spook either of them before I had what I needed. Nights at home were the hardest. Lying next to her, knowing she was keeping this massive secret, felt suffocating. I'd stare at the ceiling long after she fell asleep, replaying in my head every odd detail I'd noticed over the past months. The sudden late-night work calls, the unexplained weekends away, the way she'd started keeping her phone face down on the table. I told myself, don't confront. Not yet. A single wrong move could make her erase everything. On the 3rd day, my patience paid off. She left her phone on the counter while she went to shower. My hands didn't even shake as I picked it up. I'd already memorized her passcode weeks earlier. The screen lit up, and there it was, an open chat thread with Daniel. I scrolled up, past the polite work exchanges, until the messages turned into something else entirely. It was all there. The flirting, the "I miss you" texts, The late-night plans when I was supposedly on business trips. Photos, too. Pictures of her in the bedroom I decorated for her birthday last year, smiling into the camera in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. A strange calm came over me. I took out my own phone, snapped photos of every damning message and image. I didn't skip a single one. Each screenshot felt like a brick in the wall I was building between us, a wall she would never climb over again. But the real turning point came when I stumbled upon a voice note. I hesitated before playing it, my thumb hovering over the play button. When I finally pressed it, her voice filled the room, soft, low, and intimate. "I wish we could just be together without sneaking around," she said, followed by a laugh that wasn't meant for me. Daniel's voice chimed in, muffled but clear enough to make my stomach turn. "Patience, baby. Soon." I stopped the recording and let the phone go dark. That was it. There was no explaining this away, no possible version of events where this wasn't exactly what it looked like. I didn't put the phone back where I found it right away. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall for a few minutes, thinking about the years we'd spent together. The dinners, the trips, the countless nights I'd trusted her without a second thought. All of it felt hollow now, like a stage set that had been taken down, revealing nothing but an empty lot. By the time she came out of the shower, I was already moving into the next phase. I needed a plan, something precise, something that would leave no doubt and no escape. I wasn't going to just yell and throw things. I wanted the truth to explode in her hands, with no chance to deny it. That night, lying in bed, I mentally outlined my steps. First, secure every piece of evidence. Second, figure out how to make both of them face it at the same time. And third, decide whether I even wanted an explanation. Lauren rolled over and draped her arm across my chest, her skin warm against mine. "You've been quiet lately," she murmured. I forced a faint smile. "Just tired. Work stuff." She accepted it without suspicion, nestling closer. I could feel her heartbeat against my side. Once, that rhythm had been comforting. Now, it was just a ticking clock counting down to the moment she'd realize her game was over. The next morning, the first step of my plan came into motion. I took the day off work under the pretense of handling a personal matter, and Lauren left as usual, dressed for the office. I watched her car pull out of the driveway, the sound of the engine fading into the quiet street. As soon as she was gone, I retrieved the small voice-activated recorder I'd bought online just 2 days earlier. I knew her schedule well enough. She would meet Daniel during lunch at that little cafe on the edge of town, the one with the back booth hidden from the main dining area. I'd been there with her once, long before any of this started. Now, it would be the perfect place to catch them in the open. I arrived an hour early, dressed casually, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. My goal wasn't to confront them there. It was to gather undeniable proof. I slipped the recorder under the booth's cushioned seat, making sure it was secure and hidden. Then I left, driving to a nearby parking lot where I had a clear line of sight to the cafe's entrance. Right on schedule, Lauren's car appeared. She stepped out, smiling at someone across the lot. Moments later, Daniel walked up to her, and they embraced, quick but far too intimate for two people who were just colleagues. They went inside together, and I sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I didn't stay to watch them eat. I didn't need to. The recorder would catch everything, the words, the tone, the laughter they thought was private. While they were inside, I drove to my friend Matt's place. He worked in IT and owed me more than one favor. Sitting in his cluttered office, I handed him the screenshots, the voice note, and told him I needed them stored in multiple secure backups. Cloud storage, encrypted drives, even a hidden folder on my personal laptop. Matt didn't ask questions. He just nodded, typing rapidly. "I'll make sure none of this disappears," he said. When I got home that evening, Lauren acted as if nothing had happened. She asked about my day, cooked dinner, and laughed at some story she saw online. Every gesture, every smile, it all felt rehearsed, like she was auditioning for a role she'd already failed to earn. Later that night, while she was in the shower again, I retrieved the recorder from my bag and plugged it into my computer. My stomach knotted as I listened. It started with casual conversation, work gossip, weekend plans. Then Daniel's voice lowered. "I can't wait until this isn't a secret anymore." Lauren laughed softly. "Me neither. I hate lying, but we have to be careful. He's not stupid." That one line, that acknowledgement, hit me harder than anything else. She knew I might catch on, and still, she kept going. The recording continued with whispered plans, inside jokes, and at one point, the unmistakable sound of a kiss. By the time it ended, I had more than enough to shatter the facade she'd built. But my plan wasn't just to end the marriage. No, I wanted both of them to feel the weight of their choices at the same time. The next morning, I sent a short, polite email to Daniel's wife, Claire. I introduced myself, said there was something we needed to discuss, and asked if she could meet me in person. I didn't include any details, just enough to make sure she showed up. That night, lying in bed next to Lauren, I felt a strange sense of calm. The kind of calm you feel when you've already decided the outcome. And now it's just a matter of time. Claire agreed to meet the next afternoon at a quiet coffee shop downtown. She was punctual, arriving exactly at 3 o'clock. Her expression polite but wary. I could tell she wasn't sure whether I was going to pitch her a business idea, confess to a crime, or tell her husband had been in an accident. When we sat down, I took a deep breath and spoke plainly. "Claire, I'm sorry to bring you into this, but I think you deserve to know the truth. Your husband Daniel has been having an affair with my wife, Lauren." Her eyes narrowed instantly, but she didn't react the way I'd expected. No tears, no gasps. Just a slow, measured blink. "I see," she said quietly, folding her hands together on the table. "Do you have proof?" Without a word, I slid my phone across to her. I'd already queued up the photos, the screenshots, and the recording. She put in the earbuds I handed her and pressed play. For the next 3 minutes, she listened in silence. I watched her jaw tighten with each passing second. When it ended, she took out the earbuds, placed them neatly on the table, and looked me in the eye. "Thank you for telling me. You're right. I did deserve to know." I half expected her to storm out, but instead, she leaned forward. "What are you planning to do with this?" I hesitated. "I haven't decided yet, but I don't want them to think they've gotten away with it. I want them to feel exposed." A slow, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "Then maybe we should coordinate." Over the next hour, we quietly built a strategy, one that would hit them where it hurt without crossing into anything illegal. It was Claire's idea to involve Daniel's workplace, HR department. She explained that while it might not get him fired outright, the professional fallout would be inconvenient at the very least. By the time we parted ways, we had a step-by-step plan. Step 1. Anonymously send the evidence to HR with a note about inappropriate conduct during work hours. Step 2. Confront them together at a place where they wouldn't be able to hide behind lies. That night, I could barely look at Lauren. She sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, smiling faintly at whatever she was reading. For all I knew, she was texting Daniel right then and there. The next morning, Claire executed step 1. She called me afterward, her tone almost businesslike. "They've received the email. If he's in a meeting later, it's probably because they're questioning him." Sure enough, by that evening, Lauren came home looking distracted. She picked at her dinner, her eyes distant. "Rough day?" I asked. She forced a smile. "Yeah, just a lot going on at work." I nodded, pretending to believe her. Inside, I could feel the anticipation building. Step 2 was coming soon, and once it was done, there'd be no going back. 2 days later, Claire called me in the morning. Her voice was calm, but I could sense the undercurrent of adrenaline. "They're meeting at his apartment tonight. I have a friend in the building who saw them before. If you want to do this, tonight's the night." I didn't hesitate. "We're doing it." We agreed to meet in the parking lot around 7. Claire pulled up in a silver sedan, wearing a dark coat and no makeup. Her face was pale but determined. Without exchanging many words, we walked toward the building together. The friend she'd mentioned had given her a spare key to the front entrance, so we didn't have to buzz in. My pulse was pounding in my ears as we stepped inside and took the elevator to the 6th floor. Claire stopped in front of a gray door and looked at me. "Ready?" I swallowed hard and nodded. She knocked firmly 3 times. There was shuffling inside, and then the door opened. Lauren stood there, barefoot, wearing an oversized t-shirt that clearly wasn't hers. Behind her, Daniel appeared shirtless, his face draining of color the instant he saw us. "Hi," Claire said evenly, stepping past Lauren without waiting for an invitation. "Don't mind us. We just thought we'd stop by and see what kind of work you've been doing outside the office." Lauren stammered something. An excuse, maybe. But I wasn't listening. My eyes were locked on her, and the shock on her face was worth every sleepless night I'd endured since this began. "Mark, what are you doing here?" she whispered. "Same as you, apparently," I said coldly. "Spending time with Daniel." Claire turned to her husband. "Do you have anything to say before I send the rest of this to your boss?" Daniel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes darted to Lauren, then back to me. For the first time, I saw genuine fear there. Not just for his marriage, but for his career. I didn't shout. I didn't curse. I just took my phone out, tapped the screen, and hit send on the email I drafted to HR earlier, this time with a complete set of evidence attached. Claire glanced at me, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. We'd done it. As we turned to leave, Lauren reached for my arm. "Please, can we talk?" I stepped back. "You had your chance to talk before you decided to throw everything away." We walked out together, leaving them standing in that apartment, surrounded by the silence they'd created. Outside, the air felt colder, sharper. Claire lit a cigarette, took a long drag, and exhaled. "Well," she said, "that's that." But I knew it wasn't. Not really. Because once the shock wore off, the real work of tearing apart the lies and figuring out what to do with the wreckage would begin. Jason barely slept that night. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, his mind circling one thought over and over. Today, it would all be over. Either everything would collapse, or he'd finally be free from this sticky, suffocating nightmare. In the early morning, he got up before Lisa. He brewed himself a strong cup of coffee, set it on the table, and opened his laptop. The first step in his plan was an email to HR. Short but loaded with evidence. Screenshots of messages, photos he could never erase from his mind. He typed, "Please consider this as a serious violation of corporate ethics." He hit send and felt his stomach drop. The second step was harder. Telling Tom's wife, the woman whose life, like his own, had been blown apart without her knowing it. He found her number in an old group chat. His fingers trembled as he typed. The message was calm, almost too calm. "I'm sorry you have to hear it this way, but you deserve to know who you're living with." And then he attached the photo that had once ripped his heart in half. Her reply came 20 minutes later. Just 5 words. "Thank you. I understand now." By midday, the storm had already started. HR emailed back, saying an internal investigation had been opened. Lisa came home from work looking like a thundercloud. The moment she stepped inside, her voice was tight, almost shaking. "What did you do?" "Tom," said his wife. "She knows the truth." Jason cut in. "And so do your bosses." She dropped her bag, clenched her fists. "You ruined everything." "No, Lisa," he said, stepping closer, his voice steady. "Everything was ruined the moment you made that choice. I just stopped covering for you." The words hung in the air. Lisa turned away, slammed the bedroom door. Jason stayed in the living room, staring at his now cold coffee. He knew there was no going back. And maybe, in some eyes, he'd crossed a line. But for him, it was the only way to finally close the wound. Of course, dear friends, Jason was furious, and in his rage, he dragged another family into his personal war. A woman who probably had no idea about the betrayal unfolding around her, and who may have loved her husband with all her heart. A love she believed would last forever. In just one moment, her life was torn apart. Not because of anything she had done, but because she was pulled into a cruel game of revenge. I'm not here to judge you or put you in Jason's place. God forbid, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But I'd really like to hear your thoughts. Do you think Jason did the right thing? Or did he cross the line of what a decent person should ever do?